Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. And it's time for the April Pull List, my monthly review of comics that have come and gone that don't deserve a full review, but I want to cover them anyway. You know the deal. I got a little greedy. 2 comics a week was a little much. Not that I can't handle the workload, it's just that I think I'm going to run out of comics if I go through them that quickly. So we're just going to do 1 comic for each week. So going forward, the pull list will have 4 comics to review. We're going to start with the last week of March and Champions 18. The final issue of the Champions by the original creative team of Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos, and I give them credit, they did 18 full issues. They never stopped. My issue is that Mark Waid got influenced by social media. The first 8 or 9 issues was very cool, very real. It was about them, these teen superheroes, trying to enact real change in the world, trying to be a force of change, like we see in a lot of teenagers nowadays, stepping forward and saying things need to change. But he took a lot of heat on that from social media. A lot of people saying this is boring, I don't like this. So he flaked out and decided to do it more of as a traditional superhero book. He started doing crossovers with the Avengers. He started doing, there's a long 6-issue crossover with the Avengers that has ramifications on the Champions. It was all right then. It was still a fun book, but I felt like it lost what made it special when it did that. Once it started tying into events and current Marvel events, it kind of lost its place above the superhero genre that it was trying not to be a part of. It was still a fun book, like I said, and I always liked Humberto Ramos' art. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. This issue wraps up the 2 Viv Visions, the Vision's daughter Viv. She got turned into an organic version, then they recreated the synthesoid version, so this wraps that up. There's only 1 Viv left after this issue, after what happened in the previous issue. They write out Cyclops because they're going to finally wrap up the old time-lost Teen X-Men thing, which I think is long past due. So it doesn't explain why in the next issue Falcon and Patriot are no longer part of the team. They joined like 2 issues ago, and then when the next creative team takes over, they're gone. They don't explain it in this issue. They don't explain it in the next issue. But Ironheart, the teenage girl who became Iron Man, and the Wasp, who was on the Avengers, they never say officially that she's changing teams, but they have been in the book since the crossover, and they're going to stay on the book. Actually, I think Ironheart joined right after the crossover with Falcon and Patriot. They give Cyclops a good send-off. They give him a flashback to his past to show how he's always been so serious and very heroic, how he's had a lot of courage. There's some nice lines after he leaves that Miss Marvel's upset, and she kind of feels that the Champions, she says we were never supposed to be about beating up superheroes. I think she's channeling Mark Waid there. Mark Waid is obviously writing through her to address his own kind of frustrations with how the Champions got away from what he wanted it to be. So it gets a little meta in this issue. My suggestion, go read the first 9 issues. If you want to keep up with it after that, fine. It's just kind of a regular superhero book after that. Or you just start with issue 19 in the new creative team and see what they're doing. But this is probably not the issue to start with, the last by the current creative team. It's a fun book. I really think the first 9 issues were the best, and that's what you should read. Week 2 is Aster City number 51. Now, Aster City is coming to a close as an ongoing series, and after 52, they're going to just go on and do, like, original graphic novel releases instead of a monthly series. They've had some trouble keeping it monthly. They've had a lot of fill-in artists taking over for Brett Anderson, but this is Busiek and Anderson with Alex Ross on covers for these final 3 arc. They're revisiting their most famous story, the Aster City 1/2 issue that was a giveaway for Wizard, and many have said is the best single issue of Aster City. I ranked it number 2 on my top 11 Aster City stories video, but we're revisiting that character, Michael, who had a wife and she was erased in a cosmic event, and he kind of had to deal with loving this woman who never existed. This follows on from that. Years later, he's founded this kind of superhero support group, and it just to help people who've lost loved ones or been hurt by superhero fights, events. The little people who get affected when you've got these gods fighting throughout your city. The first half of the story is this woman recounting how her child and she were kidnapped by this spider monster, and rather than free them right away, the heroes decided to attack the monster first, but it ended up webbing. It had everyone webbed up, and it drew life force out of the web. She lost her arms, her son died, and she's very bitter. Later on, she attacks Michael, the man who founded the group, the guy from Aster City 1/2, and says he never had a wife. But since she was erased from existence, it's not easy to explain. And when he finally does tell everyone the story, he can tell that some of them don't believe him, and he's worried that this group that he's dedicated his life to is now going to fall apart. It's a lot of honest emotion. My suggestion, skip it. You don't want to start with this issue. You want to go back an issue and reread this 3-issue arc, or even go back to Aster City 1, read the whole series. It's a great series. If you don't want to read that much, go watch my top 11 Aster City stories video. I'll put the link in the description. It gives you my 11 favorite stories right up to the current Vertigo launch, all the Wildstorm days. I didn't cover the Vertigo era, so there's 52 issues. You'll have to figure it on your own. Since it came back to Vertigo, Aster City hasn't been as consistently great. They still have great issues, but some of them are just like not really working. They do a lot of sequels to famous stories in this 52-issue era, and a lot of the sequels don't work. Read the originals. Read Tarnished Angel. Read Confession. Those are great. Skip the sequels. Week number 3 is The Immortal Men. Now, this was another one of the New Age of Heroes books, like Sideways was from the February or March issue of the pull list. It's spinning out of the events of Dark Knight Metal. It's set in the DC universe, but these books all kind of feel like their own separate entity, like they're not part of the DC universe. Unfortunately, this issue was supposed to have been drawn by Jim Lee, and it is, but he only draws about half of it. The rest of it is drawn by Ryan Benjamin, one of Lee's proteges from the Wildstorm days. So unfortunately, a lot of time we're looking at really great art, and then a lot of time we're looking at really so-so art that looks a lot like Jim Lee's. It's like Jim Lee took NyQuil for half the book and just Ryan Benjamin doesn't have the level of detail or precision that Jim Lee puts into his drawings. So, but I don't want to say he copied Jim Lee, but he was inspired by Jim Lee. He draws a lot of his art techniques from Jim Lee and his teachings, probably. So what you end up getting is a book that's half Jim Lee and half kind of looks like Jim Lee, but just not as good. And that hurts it. Also, none of the characters in this book really won me over. None of these New Age of Heroes books seem to want to do proper setup. There's a kid, and he has dreams about some underground superhero academy, and sure enough, the academy is real. The heroes are real, and they're in danger, and that kid with no powers or personality is the only one who can save it. This story has been done so many before. The secret society of heroes operating beneath the other public layer of heroes working to save the world. The problem with that is you have to imagine that people like Superman, Batman, and these other heroes are morons because they've never heard of this secret society that we're just learning about. But you can't know about it until somebody invents it for the comic book. So then you just have to say, we've always been here, nobody ever found us, and that kind of discredits everyone who's been out there all this time. And I don't think that setup ever really works as well as it could. The main character, this kid, I don't even know his name, he's boring as hell. He just wants to be great, wants to be important, and he's Harry Potter. Gee, I wish I were special. I am! You know, it's one of those kind of things. However, this is written by James Tynion, and he is killing it on Detective Comics. So I'll keep reading for a few more issues at least. I'll give it a chance. One of the evil Batman, who's actually the Joker from Metal, turns up in this with his feral Robins on chains. I don't know. He's like the Bat Who Laughs or something. He's in this. He has like a one-page appearance. My suggestion, skip it. There's not enough good art and good story in this to make it worth the amount of money you'd have to spend to read a single issue. I'll let you know if it gets better. Finally, week 4 is a return to my old favorite, Lazarus, issue 28. Now, you'll remember I reviewed the first 4 issues of Lazarus, and I love this book. It's been one of my favorite Image Comics titles for a while. Well, Greg Rucka is finished writing Wonder Woman. The artist, Michael Lark, is done with his break. He needed some time off to regenerate his creative juices, and they are back during a monthly comic book. Now, not quite monthly, I should say. With issue 29, they're going to go to quarterly, but the book is going to expand to 64 pages. So you're going to get more story, just less frequently. So this issue picks up, we've had a 6-issue filler miniseries with different artists. Rucka was still writing it, but now we're back to the main storyline, except we're not. We're not following Forever or the Carlisle family. We're going to follow Jonah Carlisle, who betrayed the family with his sister, but then she set him up to take the fall. So he went running to the Lazarus family enemy, the Hawks. They tortured him. Forever, the main star of Lazarus, was supposed to kill him, but instead she ends up setting him free. He goes into the ocean in this kind of floating survival suit, and that's the last we see from him. Now, here, we're jumping back in time, and we're going to see what happens. One of the neat things about this story is it takes place in the Netherlands, so all the dialogue is written in Danish, but with like little word balloons right underneath in English, so you know what they're saying. But I appreciate that little touch, so we can see that they're talking in a foreign language and we just get subtitles. How often do you see that in a comic book? Usually just has a little box that says, translated from Danish. This is an interesting character study of Jonah. He's saved by good people who take him in, who protect him, and, he's struggling with himself. He's done terrible things. He knows he's done terrible things. His whole family turned on him and abandoned him, but now he's with these nice people who take him in, this girl who falls in love with him, although at some point you want to just shake her and say, this is Florence Nightingale syndrome. You don't want to get involved with Jonah. He's a bad man. But is he? Is he capable of changing? Is he capable of appreciating what he has now? And that's kind of what this issue and the next issue are going to explore. Do terrible people deserve a second chance? Can he change? Can he become a good person? At one point, he tries to walk away from them to spare them any pain that would come from rescuing him, but he does go back, so there is kind of a weakness and a need to belong somewhere, which is very human. My suggestion, buy it. Oh my God, this book is so good. Go back from issue 1 and start reading it. Rucka and Lark are doing tremendous world building with this series. They give you little hints about what's going on in each issue. They never spell it out for you, but they slowly fill in the blanks and give you this dystopian future where individual families rule entire continents, and they all have one warrior for their family called the Lazarus, and each Lazarus was created through different methods. Some of these families are ruthless tyrants. Others are just businessmen with too much ambition. It's a wonderful book full of real people you get invested in, even though it takes place in a comic book future. That's it. Thank you for joining me for the April pull list. Until next time, my friends, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek.